See who's in the old chat. Da, da, da. All right. Man, it's not actually showing us live yet here. Oh, there it is. All right, and now I'm listening to myself in the past. All right, good evening, folks. What an exciting night. Hopefully it is going well for you. Let's see here. We've got a Roman Yossi power play goal. That probably is going to get a point to my bench. We'll see if I switched Marchessault out for Eberle since I just added Eberle, and I figure Marchessault versus Swayman is not a great setup. We'll see how that goes. I actually have not benched too terribly much here today, so I can live with that.
You're doing better than me. I bench Nyes like a dummy.
Well, there's a guy in my allied chat who benched none other than Brandon Hagel, so I'm sure he is living out a personal nightmare.
Oh, and Perfetti too. I benched Perfetti. I'm doing great.
So it goes. Very frustrating. That locker stuffing I was worried about seems to be underway. So how? Oh, because it's all going to come down. I think it's all going to come down to those goalies. That's all I really want to see.
We're cruising for 0-3, Lewis.
I hope not. It is very, very sad, very difficult when that is when that's what's going on here. I like to enjoy my hobby, not be driven insane by it, but maybe that's too much to ask here.
What a completely unreasonable request.
Yeah, it's just like I wish I would. Oh, nice. No assist for Marchessault to feel bad about. I just want to fall face first into one of these really lucky picks instead of having my IR be instantly full before the first week is over. You know, I know that's asking a lot. All right. I think we should go ahead and get started here. We have just Elon, I think, watching right now, but that's all right. We'll maybe have some other folks join us here before too long. Oh, almost forgot. Let me get my sheet out for when we start and all that stuff here. We'll start at 3 minutes. Yeah, I'll just keep track. Feel free to stop whenever you feel like you need to stop, or if you want to repeat something, you know the drill, I'm sure. But I'll get all of the edit points down and get them to Elon, who is a whiz with the editing machine.
Sounds good.
Right. One last little look, see what's going on here. And okay, no more looking at my scores.
The goal is no edit points.
Oh boy, I love it. All right. Let's get started. What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I am your host, Lewis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my friend and yours, Ryan Downey of the Cupful Ryans. Ryan, how are you doing on this fine Tuesday evening, an all-day puck buffet?
I could be doing better, Lewis. If we were to continue the style of the main show here, we could be two guys who are hosting this podcast who are cruising towards 0-3. I don't know about you, but that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. And, we'll get into this later, but it's all to blame on Janice Moser. So I'm having a really kind of not great night. But you know what? That night is going to look up here because here I am talking to you.
Well, I started Sam Montembeault tonight, so 4 goals on 10 shots was not a lovely way to start. I had a Joel Eriksson goal taken away. It just was like I was off to a hot start, and I was like, yeah, this is great. I can't wait to see the update after my volleyball game, and it was such a regression in points. I couldn't understand exactly what had happened. So unfortunate, a bit frustrating, but listen, it is a big night here. There's a lot of action, still plenty of time to go, lots of late games. I've got a big goalie matchup, my Samsonov versus his Riddick, that I think is going to determine who is in the lead by the end of the night. So it's going to be really interesting to see how things go here moving forward. So we have a ton of content to cover for you. Obviously not a lot going on, since the last mega show, with Monday only having one game, but the Frozen Frenzy here has given us a lot to discuss, and we're doing a lot of it kind of live as we go. So this is going to be a bit of a seat of our pants type short shifts. Can't wait to get into it. And so we're going to start with some headlines. We're going to move to some injuries and outros, and then we will hit on some game updates from today so that we can be as up to date as we possibly can. And Ryan, why don't you take it away? We're going to start over in Anaheim with some questions about Ducks on our rosters and how long they deserve to stay.
Yeah, Lewis, this is one I've been thinking about pretty much since Doom Orb in our Team Tuven Allied chat was talking about this over the weekend. I don't know about you, but I watched that game that the Ducks had against Colorado, and I think you could more accurately call it a debacle. They have a ton to figure out over there. The passes aren't clicking. The systems don't seem to be gelling. Special teams are an absolute mess. They have players missing time because of new babies, which is great and exciting, but I don't think these guys have had a lot of time to really gel together. Thank goodness for Lucas Dostal, who is like the one bright spot maybe for this season, and we'll get into maybe some of these other players here. But the conversation we were having in the Allied chat was, which Ducks do you even bother keeping when they're looking this bad? They can't connect on the power play. They can't make any passes. And so I went and I had a look at the Frozen Tools page for Anaheim, and it's a bunch of snowflakes. Winter has come early on the Anaheim Frozen Tools page. And I think, one of the things that stands out to me is that they've been trying to do a top 9 with Troy Terry and Frank Vetrano sitting on L3, Vetrano being one of the higher scoring Ducks last season, sitting on line 3, and Robbie Fabry moving into the top 6. So clearly this is not working. From what I can see, the only Duck that is even remotely worth holding right now is Troy Terry, who has 3 goals and 1 assist at the time of this recording. He may have more by the end of the night. It's 9:37 p.m. Eastern time. So certainly the Ducks game hasn't started yet. Minchikov is the other Duck that is producing right now. So Terry and Minchikov are kind of who I would stick with. Lewis, do you have any thoughts about any of these other Ducks? Like, we got Frank Vetrano, we got Trevor Zegras, we got Leo Karlsson, Mason McTavish, lots of great guys that probably ended up on people's couple rosters, but are really not much to write home about right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to see some more conversion. Hopefully, we're talking about a very young team that is hopefully going to come together a little bit better here. But I agree with you. Definitely a debacle against Colorado. Lucas Dostal, you mentioned as, an option or as a player who is performing well for the Ducks that I think I would keep in mind and hang on to here. Really unfortunate about Vetrano, as you mentioned. He was a Duck that people were interested in, who really sort of probably overperformed a bit last season, but did very nicely for his owners. Yeah, I agree with you about Terry. I think I'd be ready to cut on McTavish. That hasn't been an especially exciting own, I can't imagine, for people so far, those people who are holding on to him. I'm with you about Minchikov. I'll give him a little bit of a break. Apparently his absence recently was due to food poisoning, which is a total bummer, and I can't imagine much fun at all to try to come back from to play some hockey. So I give them a little bit more time, but yeah, I'm with you that things have certainly not gone the way that we hoped to see them go. And I would have a very itchy trigger finger on many of these Ducks. Yes, there's always the question of, well, I can play him on those off nights, but you also need to not fall victim to the number of games played fallacy, because 0 times 5, if you get 5 off night games over 3 weeks or whatever, that you might hold on to one of these Ducks, that's not actually giving you any real benefit holding on to those guys. So I am okay with being ready to jettison just about everybody. Dostal, you get one guy per position. Dostal, Minchikov, Terry are reasonable holds, I would imagine. Speaking of some guys who are tough to hold, sorry, I'll add a point. It sounded like you were going to respond.
Yeah, just I agree with you on the one player per position point here. Terry, I should mention, is shooting. 2.2 shots on goal per game for this team is not bad. The fact that he's able to even get them through to the goalie. The one thing I would caution people against, just keep an eye on Minchikov. I would keep him, as you said, because of the positionality. But if these forwards don't pick it up, he won't maintain his shooting percentage. And you might be better off with a Perifs defenseman. And, Anaheim has kind of the proto Perifs defenseman in Gudis, who he is currently even with in cupful scoring. So keep an eye on Minchikov. He may, if he can keep the points going, yeah, he's definitely worth sticking around on your roster. But if not, you might be better off with a Perifs guy.
Yeah, someone who just has kind of a nice, decent floor for you versus just sort of trying to wonder night in and night out whether you're gonna hit or not. Speaking of a guy, actually, you haven't had to wonder very much lately because it hasn't been anything really to write home about for this guy, Jamie Benn. You actually labeled this card as a time for Jamie Benn to take his final bow. I appreciate the theatricality of it all, of course, given your background. So we've got Dallas playing this week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Not ideal. Jamie Benn was a guy who was going to crack my roster just on that Thursday, and it is against Boston. You never know if they're going to find very much success. 7 games over the course of the next 3 fantasy weeks, just a very grim kind of outlook schedule-wise for the Stars. Obviously, those top-performing players, very much worth hanging on. But yeah, he was the guy that I added fairly late. I was hoping that he might find a little bit of fountain of youth playing with Stankoven or Johnston or some combination thereof. But yeah, he just has not put together very much of anything. He had 1 goal, 1 assist in the first 3 games, and then has been a big nothing ever since. Previous to Tuesday's game, he had shot only 5 times on the season, so less than a shot a game. Certainly not what you like to see. You mentioned as well, he has had the highest percentage of shorthanded time in the last 7 years of his career. That really seems to suggest that, he is moving away from a sort of power forward type role to more of a checking line type role. Last season, he had a decent start. He finished nicely. He was really bad through the middle. And, we know that the power forwards tend to kind of age. That decline can happen a little more rapidly. So, in terms of whether he has taken the final bow, he took the final bow on my team. I went ahead and cut him. I was only going to get him on 1 time this week, and next week was, not looking great either. And I went ahead and dropped him because I needed space for a goalie stream, which for reasons that we'll talk about later, but I can hardly say the word goalies right now.
Yeah, we made the same choice because in another league, another redraft that I'm in, I had finally jumped on the Ben wagon, if you'll pardon the pun. I've been the biggest Jamie Benn hater probably in the Keeping Karlsson Discord over the past couple of years. If you search my name and Jamie Benn, you will not find very much positive to say. And I've been calling this for a long time. And so finally this year I'm saying, well, come on, he's playing with Johnston and Bork and, all these exciting Stankoven and all these exciting young players. And yeah, finally he takes the bow, as it were. So you dropped him for a goalie. I dropped him for a goalie stream tomorrow, Logan Thompson, hoping that he can turn in a good performance, and end up, being streamed out for someone else in the future, I'm sure. So we both made that Jamie Benn swap, but you picked up someone recently who I think, might be able to produce as much as we thought that Jamie Benn would produce, and that is Jordan Eberle. And so stick with me on this one. I know he's not been the most exciting fantasy own over the past couple of years, especially since coming to Seattle. He's kind of been the scoring guy. He doesn't really do a whole lot of other stuff that makes his, semi, reliable point scoring relevant. But I want to shout out a recent addition to the Keeping Karlsson Discord. A friend of mine from real life, Holy Mackinac, is his username on our Discord. for pointing this out to me while we were at work the other day. That since training camp began, Eberle has been stapled to Shane Wright. Shane Wright's a pretty good player. He's played very well for the AHL Firebirds over the past year and a change. And he's been stapled with him with wingers like Ty Cartier and then Tolvanen. But since the regular season began, it's been Jake McCann. It's been
get to there. That's 15-15.
What is his first name?
Who?
McCann.
Jared.
Oh, Jake McCann. I'm thinking of Jake McCabe.
There's a million. Yeah, the Jake mix or the J mix are giving us trouble.
Yeah, sorry about that, Elon. I broke my streak. Since regular season began, he's been stapled to Jared McCann, and it's important to note that it's winger version of McCann and not center McCann. We know that like last season when McCann was playing on the wing, he was a very reliable, upper half of the point scoring league. We're very happy with McCann. And so this line of Eberle, Wright, and McCann with Wright in the middle is very interesting to me. You look at the context of Seattle as well. They've got Chandler Stevenson. They've got Yanni Gord. Why do you have these guys? And Matty Beniers. Why do you have these guys if you aren't giving them the defensive minutes? Benier gets the checking line minutes. Maybe that leaves Wright centering a sheltered scoring line with McCann at his prime position. Sure, he's not a 96-point player with a 55% shooting percentage, is Jordan Eberle. But if he gets back to shooting 2 shots per game, even with some regression, plus the additional responsibility of being the new captain of this team, I think this could be a career year for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm hoping he can be kind of the guy who defies a little bit the stereotype about the Kraken, which is pretty much that they have a top 12 and it's all pretty much the same, communist hockey out in Seattle. No surprise. But yeah, obviously I think that when we're trying to think about where can we find offense in the Seattle roster, hold on, sorry. Make sure you mute when you're typing because it's click-clackety loud. No worries. I'll let's see, 1708 or so. Click clack. Lewis restarts. All right, I'm gonna just go back from the beginning there. Yeah, I think that this is a guy that maybe we can hope he can defy the usual rule of thumb we have about Seattle, which is that they have, sort of a top 9 or maybe even a top 12 that all sort of seems the same. Communist hockey out in Seattle. What I like about McCann is, what I like about Eberle is that he's lining up on the McCann line, and that's usually the one that has the offensive punch. And is usually able to produce a little bit more. I like having the hot hand, certainly compared to a guy who is as ice cold as Jamie Benn. Happy to have that not be a 1-for-1 trade on my roster exactly, but I think it sets up properly for the potential turnaround in terms of how my team is performing, to take a hot hand over an ice cold hand. You're absolutely right. He's not going to shoot 55%, obviously, and I would like to see that shooting increase a little bit here. As the 2-shot sort of average that we're seeing. But if he's getting sort of the offensive minutes, I think that makes him a little bit more of an appealing option than we usually see from Seattle. And he's reasonably widely available, just 14% rostered across Yahoo, although that number has been going up, just plus 4% yesterday. So people are starting to see him as a potential add there. And yes, I'm hoping that he could be somebody who I can stick with for a reasonable amount of time, maybe not all season long, but a reasonably long-term hold. One place where the division of labor
that we've become accustomed to on Seattle has not held true this season. Jordan Eberle is on pace for 60% of the power play time. And so, hopefully that trend continues, and then that makes him a for sure season-long hold.
Yeah, that would be a good setup, certainly. Less of the mushy middle for everybody. Let's head over to Toronto, where you asked an interesting question. Who do we like as kind of the 5th skater worth holding in Toronto? We have Nyes and Domi as our options here. Nyes is the favorite based on Fantrax and Yahoo roster percentage. Domi has been on a point per game pace, all assists, very little shooting on behalf of Domi. So we might not see that change before too much longer. Obviously, Nyes is getting that nice line one deployment, but line two is not bad at all, obviously, with William Nylander out there for Domi to play with. Both getting time on power play too. Now, of course, Nyes has the advantage here on Frozen Frenzy Tuesday, hitting the score sheet. That's 2 games in a row with goals. So, it has been not something that particularly was helpful for the team, but nice for him to manage to put together something for his owners, those who put him on their starting roster. I know that he is scoring from the bench for you, which does not help, certainly. You have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in Toronto. Do you feel like there's a chance that we could see Nyes maybe break into that top power play role and really make him someone that we are going to have eyes on?
Yeah, it's an interesting question between these two guys. I think I heard on the broadcast earlier tonight that Domi is actually leading the league in primary assists. It seems, likely that would be the case because he has just been on fire since taking over for John Tavares, who, he lost 10 pounds having the flu over Thanksgiving weekend. Probably the only person to lose weight over the Thanksgiving weekend. Poor guy. I guess he maybe didn't have his magic amulet on that weekend. But I digress. So Domi in that Tavares spot is very interesting, but I had the good fortune of being able to see Nyes live and in person last night as I took my parents to a Toronto Maple Leafs game. Very exciting time for us. And we got to see Nyes live and in person, and he looked really good. He looked pretty quick going down the wing, and that goal that he scored last night was pretty good as well. He's been shooting just under 3 shots per game. He had, 1 goal prior to yesterday's game, and he's added some more over the past 2 here. Probably more coming, I would say. I don't think that this is, this is great even strength production for him. And you mentioned the power play in Toronto, and aside from tonight's game, which is a bit of a mess with Hildeby in net, perhaps not. We're kind of unclear about the circumstances around why Hildeby was playing tonight instead of Wool. They weren't really too keen on starting Stolarz 2 nights in a row. But the one thing prior to tonight that was a worry in the Toronto market is that top power play, which, for years has been those top 4 forwards and Morgan Rielly, and then whoever the flavor of the month offensive defenseman is, which currently seems to be Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I wonder if Berube will, go nuclear here and bust up that power play 1. And it seems to me only logical that Marner and Matthews would stick with their line mate on line 1 and have Nyes up on that power play. Perhaps in a net front role, perhaps in a bumper role, hard to see. But maybe we'll just wait to see who gets up there when and if it happens. And, as with anything in Toronto, it could change, the next day. So perhaps we don't get too married to Nyes if he ends up on the top power play. It could very easily end up as Domi on the top power play with Marner moving to power play 2. So I would like to see a power play that has Matthews and Nylander on 1 and Tavares and Marner on 2. Perhaps we see that coming forward. The last thing to consider here is, we're talking about who the 5th skater might be. Could the 5th skater be John Tavares? And could one of these guys supplant him as the 4th best forward? As I mentioned, he's been recovering from the flu. I expect him to bounce back in the way that we know John Tavares usually does. We'll probably know more by the end of this week. What do you think about that? Is that a bit too hot takey for the short shifts universe here that Tavares could maybe be the 5th or 6th skater?
No, I'm into it. Conveniently, you're talking to someone who has some pretty negative feelings towards Tavares. Obviously, he had that great hot start last year, but really, really struggled through much of the season. The kind of woo-woo aspect of his beliefs about health are, maybe that's just a personal pet peeve, but that doesn't make me love him any more than I do currently. As you mentioned, obviously, recovering from some illness, definitely problematic for my Americans. Blinking in confusion, of course. Canadians celebrate Thanksgiving a little earlier than we do, just to keep that in mind. But yeah, I could easily see, especially if Domi keeps up the nice distribute. Let's try that again. especially if Domi keeps up the nice distribution that's been getting him these assists that he's been piling up. I think that's going to be really nice. And yeah, I think maybe this could be that breakout season we've been waiting for. The thing that worries me about Nyes is that he's not giving you very much of anything if he is not scoring. If he's not hitting the score sheet, you're not getting anything else from him, not even that many shots. So that would be something that I would be a bit concerned about. But other than that, yeah, I think it is an exciting potential opportunity here for him. We saw him kind of touch it a few times last season without ever seizing it. Maybe this is the year that he is able to seize it. All right, let's quickly talk about some injuries and outjuries and then get to the meat of the schedule here, which is the game updates. Like I said, we are kind of flying by the seat of our pants here. I'm expecting a little longer shift than usual, but that is fine by me if you are up for it. We'll start out with Calgary with a potential outjury in the near future, and that is going to raise some interesting questions about who belongs on the top power play. Ryan, take us over into Calgary and tell us what's going on.
Yeah, Yegor Sharangovich will be making his return soon enough. And preseason would tell us that Sharangovich will end up on the top line with Kadri and Kuzmenko and taking Connor Zary's spot on the power play. I understand that Kuzmenko and Zary have been producing relatively similarly over the past, couple of games. But I think it's the same question as we had earlier with some of those centers in Seattle. Why do you have Kuzmenko on your team if he's not on power play one? Zary is young. He's, really overperformed people's expectations. So the team might want to challenge him to produce without the top guys. It feels like Kuzmenko is pretty cemented in on that line and on that power play unit. So the question is, who can you trade a Zary for? And I'm definitely the wrong person to ask. I've failed in every cupful trade I've tried to make. It's definitely my weak spot when it comes to being a cupful manager. I'm definitely more comfortable with streaming in players and looking to maximize schedule than I am, deciding if it's worth trading for someone. So I guess the question for me here is, who's the 60 pointsiest guy you can think of? Because I think that's who you could reasonably trade Zary for. Is it someone like Mikael Granlund? Is it someone like Pavel Zacha? Maybe, if Ehlers, he's riding the hot streak right now, but it looks to be unsustainable. Maybe there's a smart manager who wants to move away from Ehlers. Does a veteran option like Claude Giroux tickle your fancy? Maybe one of those Carolina wingers. We're getting pretty far down the list here, but is this the kind of move you'd be looking to make if you had Zary on your team?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why you might not want to move along potentially from Zary. Granlund is an interesting option because he was brought up on the last mega show as someone who, at least while Celebrini is out, is in a really nice position. Is he going to hold it there? There may be some uncertainty. Ehlers, they definitely talked about as someone who is overperforming, at least by Brian's estimation. So that is an interesting option, but I feel like just the excitement of having potentially the long awaited power play one, Ehlers, is going to make it really tough to pry him out of his owner's hands while he is still as successful as he's been. Maybe Natchez. I don't think Jarvis is going to be someone who would be an option. You actually had a few people that you didn't mention a little further down. I kind of like the idea of maybe trying to make a move see if the Tomas Hertl owner is a little frustrated. He's only put together 3 points so far through the first 6 games of the season. But I really like his minutes. He's consistently getting 18 plus, only one game where he's been underneath, and he's had several games or a couple games over 20. He's shooting reasonably. He's hitting and blocking, which really fills out the stat sheet nicely. That could be, I think, an interesting potential option. I think the others, you've got, you may have people in your league who are not aware that his position on that power play might be threatened. So could be a decent option in the cupful. I worry that people are quite tuned in and certainly listening to this show. So that might be something to watch out for. But the names that stick out to me that you mentioned, Granlund, I like, maybe Natchez, maybe Hertl as some potential options that you might want to send a flyer out there for. Just really quickly, since I got slightly onto the topic of Vegas, A guy who is really overperforming on Vegas by just about every metric, who might be someone that you want to try to make a move and send him before he kind of starts to regress to the mean, is Ivan Barbashev, who just, along every stat that Brian might like to mention, you would see him overperforming expectations. So he's definitely striking me as a potential sell high candidate, someone that I would be looking to shop should you have the option. So just someone I thought of because I mentioned Hurdle, being a little bit cold, who's actually hot for the team, but so hot that I don't think he is really even remotely sustainable in that position.
And while you're on Vegas, a potential outchery coming back who I think might be sustainable is Olofsson. I'm a believer in the Eichel Olofsson connection, and Olofsson getting the fresh start in Vegas might have been just what he needed to become fantasy relevant once again.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely another one to keep an eye on as far as injuries and outjuries go. Speaking of, we'll run through a few pretty quickly here. We got word that Anthony Duclair is going to be injured and out for a little while. That has meant that Simone Holmstrom has been elevated to that top line position. Not much production here tonight. Not someone I'm particularly interested in, even though he is obviously, finding himself in a pretty decent spot. But, he has maxed out at 25 points in 75 games. That's his best performance. He shot 20% that season to score 15 goals. So I think that is, someone who is in a nice position, and I think it's a little bit deceptive. He's not someone that I have a ton of faith in. I would love to have him prove me wrong and have it be something where a little bit later in the season, we're looking at him, having filled in, doing quite nicely. Maybe by next week, we're talking about him as a potential add. But I think right now the Duclair injury is just kind of a negative for everybody, and not enough of a bonus to Holmstrom to make him worth adding. We also, in the outjuries, we saw Matthew Tkachuk make his return for Florida. They were dominated by the Minnesota Wild, who are off to a very nice start. So don't really like to see that so much. I was hoping that maybe he would add a little bit of spark to that power play, and maybe we could see Adam Boquist perform. He did manage a couple peripheral points, 2 shots and 2 blocks for Adam Boquist, representing, unless I'm mistaken, yes, his best game of the season in a game where he did not score a point. So the most peripherals that we've seen from him, another 11-minute game. Unless you are in a position like me where your defense is like a Civil War, medical tent, I think you should be moving on from Boquist. And then we also, on the topic of defensemen, including actually some defensemen who have been successful in that position for the Florida Panthers, although not last year. Vince Dunn was moved from day to day to long-term injured reserve, retroactive to the 17th. So he's going to be out for a little while. Just more benefit for our guy, Brandon Montour, who will continue to be the top offensive defenseman for that squad. And last but not least, Juraj Slafkovsky is injured, and he'll be evaluated in a week. That moved Kirby Dach up to line 1. I believe he had some success there, picking up a point, unless I am mistaken. It also put Oliver Kapanen as the second line center. Obviously, a very unpleasant outing for the Canadians, who lost 7-2 to the Rangers, and they were losing the game before it even really started. So not a great outcome for them. Tough for us Mountain Boat owners. We got that really nice start. Hopefully you won your match after that first super successful game, because I don't know that we're going to touch those heights of fantasy points again here moving forward. So that was a bunch of injury stuff there. Ryan, do you have anything that you would like to add from that little injury outjury section?
Yeah, the only thing I really want to kind of just hammer home is I'm not a Holmstrom believer. I'm not really a New York Islanders believer, if we're being honest here. So I would definitely avoid that personally. I won't be making that move, and I certainly won't be adding Oliver Kapanen for his prime deployment in quotes with
No, I
the
wanted to bring
Les
him up.
Habitants.
He was getting some love from some of the Habs fans in the Discord, but no, not someone that we're expecting certainly to step in and make a major difference anytime, particularly soon. So, all right, we're going to head into a quick ad break from our sponsors. You're listening to Short Shifts. All right, 35:15 or so for the ad break. Yeah, for Patty. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like how Ingram's doing. I don't like that my opponent has gotten easy goals from Batherson. And then another one, Rasmus Anderson just scored. Come on. I guess I got a goal from Travis Sanheim. I can't complain too much, but it's just very, very frustrating so far to start the season. I'm trying not to lose hope here. Again, it's all going to be the big battle between Samsonov and Riddick. Whoever wins this goalie battle tonight is going to win my matchup. I'm calling my shot right now.
Wow. That's true fantasy sicko territory right there.
Oh yeah. Trust me. I am, I'm at the point right now where I am just reaching desperately. Again, maybe when I get my ridiculous IR cleared up a little bit, but Doughty and Dursey aren't coming back anytime soon. At least Barkov is coming back relatively soon. Did I mention that, by the way, in that outreach section? That Barkov is likely to return during the road trip.
Mentioned, yeah.
All right. Well, I'll leave that to the boys on. I'll make a note that the guys on Thursday should talk about it.
So I guess we'll add Ingram to the bad goalies list tonight.
Oh yeah, for sure. Is it 3? Yeah, 3. Just keep Batherson out of it any longer.
Give me some Kachuk goals, please.
Who's scoring these Seattle goals? Can we get like a short shifts bump for our guy? Let's see. Oh, it's not even up there yet. Oh my God, 4 goals against
Jared McCann scored a goal.
Yeah, but did we get an assist there? No, backhand unassisted on the first one, and then the second one hasn't been posted yet. Okay. Well, I want to make sure you get to your game here. So do you want to jump into the second half?
Sure. Right, yeah. Do you want me to bring us back?
Yeah, let's do it. We usually just say welcome back to Short Shifts, if that works for you.
Welcome back to Short Shifts.
Sorry. Redo. I jumped. I just was going to write down when we were getting back.
Welcome back to Short Shifts, and it's enough lollygagging on the games tonight. It's time to do these game updates before we have, even more to talk about and turn this into the longest shift of the year. And my responsibility is to let everybody know that, all goalies are bad. I know that this doesn't surprise you all. If you've been listening to the show, you know that, we talk about goalies a fair bit in this community, and they always end up disappointing you. So let me just roll through a bunch of these bad goalies tonight. Sam Montembeault, you mentioned earlier, 4 goals against, pulled for Primo. Bobrovsky with 5 goals against, pulled for Spencer Knight. Allen with 6 goals against. I don't know if he was pulled. I don't think he was pulled for Markstrom. I think he was, he had to just stay in there and live with it. Sam Ersson allowed 4 goals on 29 shots. Fedotov this season has not been covering himself with glory as his relief either, with 2 games that don't look like they are at all in NHL caliber goaltender. Patty has just informed us in the chat that, as everyone expected, Anton Forsberg has 10 saves on 10 shots, and Connor Ingram, a favorite of ours during the offseason, has let in 3 goals on 6 shots, just as everybody, predicted going into it. I really want to drill down a little bit on Montembeault here for a second. He's only had 2 quality starts this season, one of them being the first game against Toronto, where, that one game caused everybody to say that he's now, a Team Canada, stalwart for the Four Nations face-off later this year. Give me a break. 3 really bad starts for him going forward. And you mentioned earlier, Slavkovsky is out. I think you might have mentioned that Caden Gooley is out too with an injury. Gooley is a pretty solid defenseman for them on an already very young defense. where the goal for this season, if you listen to 32 Thoughts, the goal that Elliot Friedman had to say for Montreal this year was figuring out who actually is going to be a Canadiens defenseman. The goal is clearly development here. It's maybe not, maybe they feel great that they have a guy like Montembeault, but, he's not going to be the priority here. Let's put it that way. 3 straight games for him, giving up 3, 4, and 5 goals. I think it's probably time for you, if you haven't already, please, I think it's time to drop Sam Montembeault.
Yeah, I haven't yet, but I am sort of interested in, especially if he starts to share the net a little bit more with Caden Primo. I did add, I mentioned before, Samsonov. He's getting his second start in a row this evening, which is pretty interesting. I hope that we will not be adding him to that list of bad goalies. But this has been not necessarily a referendum on the play of Aiden Hill, but Cassidy came out and said basically he's wanted to make sure that he started against Tampa Bay and started against St. Louis so that he could get a look in front of these potential Team Canada coaches, who could, maybe want to add him. I don't know necessarily. Like I get the excitement about, performing well and playing for your country and all of that stuff. I don't know that it's necessarily a great job to sort of mess around on your NHL team's success potentially by trying to get FaceTime with these guys. I mentioned they have televisions, they can read a box score, they can look at the advanced stats. Like, is there truly something that you're going to be able to show in person, that is going to stand out to a coach and make them say, wow, if I had not seen him in that game that we played against the Knights earlier, I never would have made this choice. I just am incapable of making this choice without seeing him live. I have to cast some doubt at that. We also, have seen, some play from Mrazek and Soderblom that has maybe, Mrazek not great. We didn't expect a ton out of Chicago. Soderblom's been okay. Maybe, a 0G option, somebody that you can, or I'm sorry, I gotta restart that. 42-15. Maybe not the 0G option that we sort of hoped that Mrazek could potentially be. I know that he is someone who just is always showing up on my good friend Shams Benamor's roster for reasons unclear. He has a very soft spot in his heart for goalies who are terrible and play for terrible teams. So, we can have him sort that all out on Thursday. We did see Eustace and Union going for another start here. He is currently leading 2-1 against Seattle. So unless our boy Jordan Eberle can break through a little bit more here, he's looking like he might be getting a little bit of a run, someone who might be worth taking a look at. We haven't seen much of anything from Georgiev outside of against really abject opponents. So, I think this is a wait and see, maybe just because, Kaapo Kähkönen is in there as well. This was all stuff that was covered in the mega show. But it's a little crowded there. And I wonder if jumping on him might be a little bit dangerous just because there are so many goalie options that they want to play. And it seems like they would really love for Georgiev to seize the position, although he has not been able to do so.
Another wait and see, potential thing for you to keep an eye on here. Back to, Fedotov and Urson in Philadelphia. We were talking earlier in the short shifts chat about this may be an opportunity for Kolosov, who was the goalie who, went back to Russia. He wasn't very happy with the lack of opportunity that was apparent for him in Philadelphia. It gives credence to my personal theory that Briere and Jones said, look how bad these guys are. Maybe you'll get a chance in the NHL this season. So something to watch there. I mean, they have a ton of, meh goaltending options in the minors in Philadelphia, but we'll have to wait and see on Kolosov and Noonan, although it's, pretty good that he's actually getting a start instead of just getting thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, that's pretty decent to see here. Let's take a look now. We'll head over to Washington. interesting stuff to talk about. Obviously, the Sunday show, we got a lot from Tom Wilson and whether, this is a guy who might be able to keep it up. Obviously, his unsustainable shooting percentage was something that was mentioned. At his best, he's been a 14 to 16% shooter, 41.7%. I believe that is before Tuesday night's game. Definitely a hold. We talked about that. Maybe even someone who you might try to trade for. I think Brian and Elon talked about, but don't be getting your expectations out of whack. We've got Mangiapane over in Washington, getting a little bit of a fresh start. Got a shorthanded goal, shooting a couple times a game. That's nice to see. Connor McMichael with a nice start. You were mentioning him as someone who was quite interesting. 2 assists Tuesday, 5 fantasy points per game so far in the Cupful, which is certainly better than many of my forwards have been managing. I don't think he's going to maintain this point per game pace, but he's been a very interesting person to have on your roster at times last season. And obviously he is a young player who will start to develop more. So I kind of like that spot he's in on the wing 5-on-5 with Wilson and Dubois. Obviously Wilson's been off to a good start. And so he's seen some benefit there. He's seen his power play time increase. And you had mentioned Carberry's a really nice coach for young players. They like him. They seem to respect him in Washington. And this could be a nice opportunity for Connor McMichael to really develop his game a little bit this season, and might have stretches where he's really worth an ad. And right now might be one of those times.
Yeah, I hope my brethren from the Fantasy Hockey Life podcast, Jesse Severe, is listening. He's a huge McMichael guy. He's been beating the drum on him for a couple of years now. I think we probably all thought, when you look at last year at guys like, Oshie and Backstrom still kicking around, that, maybe McMichael could leapfrog their desiccated corpses to be that 2C. They've got Dubois, they've got Strome. They're pretty good for top 6 centers now. So I think probably McMichael's only chance to maintain this point pace, if there is even a hope, is sticking with this 5-on-5 deployment with Wilson and Dubois. And so, we'll have to just wait and see on him. But he's a guy that I am certainly interested in adding. And if you're in my Cupful division, I hope that I can add him tonight before you get him. So there we go.
All right. And I wanted to, you mentioned that you were, there live to watch Tampa, and especially Andrei Vasilevsky, for those of us unfortunate enough to have rostered him last night, just get blasted out of the arena. But we now have a pretty nice bounce back with a whole lot of stats to talk about. Why don't you take us through this great Tampa game from tonight and all of the people who benefited statistically?
Yeah, lots of great production from a lot of the Tampa Bay Lightning forwards tonight after a really lackluster affair at Scotiabank Arena last night. I can say one of the biggest pops of the night was when Vasilevsky was pulled. As we know, that doesn't happen very often. And actually, I was pretty surprised to see that Johansson got the start tonight. I think we all thought, at least, that he was being pulled so they could actually play him tonight on the back-to-back. And so, I guess we'll have to wait and see with Vasilevsky, but maybe he needs a bit of a reset. On to the positive, though, for tonight. We had a natty hattie from Brandon Hagel. Back on power play 1, everything is coming up roses for Hagel. The question is, how long will it hold? He added an assist for good measure, and I'm not sure what has happened since we started recording the podcast here, but 4 points in one night after yesterday's effort, pretty strong. All those points tonight coming at even strength. And this is a player who his 5-on-5 offense is unmatched year over year, especially since he made it to Tampa Bay. So very excited if you're a Brandon Hagel owner. I'm not, because I tend to prioritize power play 1 guys. And so just given my draft position, I didn't get a chance to get any shares of him. Another interesting forward right now is Gensel. I know that that's maybe not groundbreaking to say, but I think the interesting thing about Gensel is that him and Kucherov have kind of changed roles over the past couple of weeks, with Kucherov obviously going on that shooting percentage bender and leading the league in goals, with Gensel, assisting on a lot of those efforts. Tonight, Elon was worried in our short shifts chat that he might just be an assist guy. Don't worry, Elon. He scored a goal tonight. He's on a point per game pace, scored a goal tonight on the power play. Him and Kucherov look to really have clicked. Stamkos, those Stamkos fans who are maybe missing him in Tampa Bay, probably not missing him as much looking at Gensel's production. So I think we can all relax on Gensel. It looks like it'll be a really exciting season in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to jump in to add about the Hagel Natty Hattie, well done, sir, is that he sorry. Just the only thing that I wanted added about Hagel here is that it's very unfortunate when these players, are playing on a really slow night and do nothing, and then on the really busy night they go off because we have a lot more people who are benching them for one reason or another to get other players in. I know there are a couple friends of the pod who did not play Hagel today, so my heart goes out to those folks. I hope they are doing okay here tonight. The other thing that I wanted to add, you mentioned about the question as to whether Vasilevsky might get the start here on Tuesday. As Patty mentioned in the chat, and as we saw all over game day tweets, Cooper came out and basically said, we're not going to change our schedule because of, a particular performance. They said that, he could have had a 1-0 shutout and won the game, and he would not have played today. So despite the fact that they pulled him to get JoJo into the game last night, the plan was to start Johansson here on Tuesday. So I sort of appreciate that consistency and predictability, I suppose. I sort of was assuming the whole way that was what was going to happen, and that gave me the confidence to add Samsonov before the other Sharks in my league went ahead and picked him up.
Yeah, just on the topic of regretting benching guys and a guy who is relevant in this Tampa Bay game, I have a share of Janice Moser in my home league, and I am facing Janice Moser tonight in the Cupful, and he has completely blown me up to the tune of 15 points. It looks to be 14 fantasy points, 1 goal and 2 assists, which is which is a very popular stat line for him these days. 1 goal, 2 assists in 2 of the games so far. That represents his entire point scoring output, those 2 games. Don't love that one of those games happened against me. He also has probably one of the better categories leagues lines that you could see, with a goal, 2 assists, 1 shorthanded point, 1 shot on goal, 1 hit, 1 block. So if you were the person who added Janice Moser as a potential, one of the only potential streaming options this week, I think you're probably very happy. If you're someone who benched him like me, you're probably very sad.
That's the way it goes, especially when they decide to do a gimmick night here in the NHL like we're seeing. So it's always going to be inevitable. All right, let's just rapidly go back and forth with some streaks that are continuing here on the busy night. I'll get things started. Let's go to Connor Garland in Vancouver. He's playing on line 1, depending on your definition of line 1, but we're calling the Pettersson line 1, power play 1. He has already gotten 2 power play points so far this season, getting about 50% of that time. Doesn't seem like a guy who's going to be there the whole way, but probably worth tossing him into your lineup while he is there. So he scored tonight. And as you mentioned, the last time he had this much power play time, he was a 65-point guy. So that's nice to have him there. But of course, we got to beware of Jake DeBrusk as a potential replacement there. So there are other players who could potentially seize that position.
And I'm going to take on Marco Rossi here, who somehow, at the time that I prepared this segment, he was only 10% owned on Yahoo, which is unacceptable, frankly. He's gone in all of my leagues, not surprising, with the caliber of player that I'm playing against in the Cupful. But you can make a difference. Go out and get him if he's still out there. He's 1 injury away from a power play 1 time. I doubt they give it to him otherwise on a Bill Guerin managed team. He tends to prefer his veteran options, but Rossi is someone who is very exciting and finally might be starting to deliver on his draft pedigree. Watch out, though, because his line with Kaprizov isn't so hot on shot attempt differential. They're positive on shot differential, which kind of indicates to me that maybe they're missing the net a bunch, but who knows? Hines might get annoyed with the lack of conversion on those opportunities and shake things up. there's definitely some options for the top 6 in Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think we're starting to maybe see now that seems to be really tied to the hip with Kaprizov, that this might be that Rossi breakout that we've been hoping to see. Obviously, he's been up and down between the A and the NHL at times in the previous seasons, and has been a guy who we sort of thought was going to take a while to live up to his draft pedigree, just because he was a smaller player, needed to put on weight, needed to be able to play up at that NHL level. So really nice to see. I wish I had shares of him. He is playing really well, and love to see him really just playing great at even strengths with an exciting player like Kaprizov. All right, let's jump over to Columbus, probably one of our more surprising, exciting groups to discuss. Monahan has been a point per game player. He's the number 1 center. Nobody else who plays for the team is staying healthy. So I think we're going to see Monahan remain in that position. I know, obviously, due to circumstances well out of his control, there was a lot of concern about how he might play this season. You were mentioning that maybe this could be the kind of thing where he sort of has an emotional year, out there with Kirill Marchenko, who's been playing really nicely. That was a guy that I had pegged early in the season as the guy who could potentially move into that 60-65 point area if he was getting consistent top line and top power play, and he's been playing really nicely. So yeah, I think if you can get somebody on that top line. Now, we did see Shinikov play some second line here today, so that maybe is of some concern. That was a guy also that was brought up on the Mega Show, but certainly Monahan and Marchenko are really nice options. I saw Marchenko actually hit the waiver wire very briefly in my league. I was out of moves because, of course, I'm trying to replace injured player after injured player, but he was snatched up for an amount of fab that I would have easily doubled, I think, although I tend to love to throw my fab away wherever possible. But I'm a believer in Marchenko for this season as well.
Yeah, who would have thought that Columbus had anyone fantasy relevant this year? But I was one person who was able to grab Monahan, and I'm pretty happy with the return so far. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it. We'll finish off by talking about someone who you're particularly interested in Neil Pionk. And I'm saying finish it off. It's currently, with this particular Frozen Frenzy gimmick tonight, I feel like it's important to say we're finishing off here at 10:27 p.m. There's still so much to go tonight. So if you're like, hey, they didn't mention, Leo Karlsson had 4 goals. Well, that's, because we didn't get the chance to talk about it. So Neil Pionk, with a very exciting game tonight, now with 6 points in the last 2.5 games. And while 4 of those were in an 8-goal beatdown of the Sharks, which was pretty fun to watch. The Jets have scored 6 or more in 3 of their 5 completed games. So that secondary scoring is there, and Pionk is getting in on it. He's a nice ad for people like Lewis, who might be down a D or 2 and in need of reinforcements. And like you mentioned, Doughty and Dursey not coming back anytime soon. So Pionk would be a pretty good guy to throw in there, but move quick. His percent added numbers are rising on Yahoo.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, I don't have any members of my division listening live because I am going to throw some fab on that guy. Listen, I am into any defenseman who can fog a mirror at this point, but Pionk with the secondary scoring that's going on, I think that is one in particular that I am pretty interested in. We are touching on an hour unedited of our short shift here, so I think we probably have to bring it to an end, but it has been an absolute blast getting to spend the evening talking hockey with you, Ryan. I hope that things turn around for you and you have success this week. As I said, I think this Samsonov versus Riddick goalie battle that I've got coming up in my matchup, that's going to determine the winner, despite what the Yahoo projections have to say here. And I just want to toss out a little bit of credit to my Red Wings, Alex Lyon, finishing off a shutout of the Duclair-less New York Islanders, winning 1-0. So 2 nice goalie performances there, but Lyon is the one who's going to show up on top. You would have, I applaud anybody with the guts to start Alex Lyon here tonight. The Red Wing goalies have been just so concerning that I have been trying to stay away as much as possible. But Ryan, thank you so much. As you mentioned, you can hear your lovely voice on the Fantasy Hockey Life podcast. And I hope certainly that we'll see you again here on Short Shifts in the not too distant future.
It was a pleasure to join you, Lewis, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everybody who joined us live. Good luck to everybody who still has lots of exciting hockey to watch so far this evening. Don't stay up too late. You may have work tomorrow. Just get through the day if you can. I'm giving a test tomorrow. That I thought was a pretty smart strategy. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But to all of you out there, yes, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for downloading the show. Thank you for supporting the show. If you enjoyed it, please consider joining the Keeping Karlsson Patreon group at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. That will give you access to play in the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. Listen, the league has started, but there are people who are going to drop out. There are people like me whose entire team is injured and who are getting pretty itchy about their situation, and they aren't maybe as much of a sicko as myself. So there is a wait list to take over teams, and we use those wait lists pretty consistently because we want to have active players always in our division. So check that out. You, of course, can interact with Brian, Elon, Ryan, myself, the rest of the Short Shifts crew, and hundreds of other talented fantasy managers on our active Discord server. Check out GameDayTweets.com to get all the best info from Twitter without having to slog through the rest of Twitter. Always very nice, including team by team and searchable tweets by player name. Please visit that site and all the great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick as well. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short. All right, 101:30.
Long shift.
Ooh-wee. Well, it was inevitable, right? We were, we
tasked
were
with talking about every team in the league.
There's a lot going on, right? That was a blast. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody who joined us in the chat. Have a great evening to all of you, and may your fantasy players score lots of points, unless you are my opponent. All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to end the stream.